They thought it was funny, just a harmless little joke. "Let's see if he can make it back on his own," they laughed as they drove off, leaving me stranded at a rest stop in the middle of Colorado. But I never went back. 15 years later, they found me. By then, it was too late. That summer, I turned 22. I was living at home, working at my father's hardware store for pocket change, and being the permanent punching bag to my older brother, Aaron. My dad, Dennis, wasn't just strict. He was the kind of man who believed tough love meant breaking you down and calling it parenting. My mother, Carol, would occasionally mumble a soft protest when things got too harsh, but her words carried no weight. Aaron, he followed in Dad's footsteps like a loyal shadow. Being cruel to me was just one more way to earn praise. We weren't poor, but vacation was a foreign word in our house, so when Dad announced we were taking a road trip to Uncle Ray's wedding in Colorado, I should have known something was off. We'd made it 3 days into that nightmare when it happened. The morning had been like every other, cramped, tense, and filled with mocking jokes from the front seat. I was curled up in the back of our old Suburban, pretending to sleep while trying to ignore the digs about how useless I was. Around noon, we stopped at a rest area off the highway. The place was quiet. Just endless open fields, distant mountains, and a sad little brick building with a couple of vending machines and bathrooms. I got out to stretch and use the restroom. I left my phone in the car to charge. Didn't bring my wallet. Why would I? I thought we were just making a quick stop. I was gone 10 minutes, maybe less. When I walked out, blinking in the bright Colorado sun, the parking lot was empty. Our green Suburban. Gone. At first, I thought it was a prank. I walked around the entire rest stop, checking every corner, every stall. Nothing. Just silence and a growing knot in my chest. I sat on the curb and waited. 1 hour. Then 2. A trucker asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was waiting for my girlfriend. He nodded and drove off. That cold realization settled in. They weren't coming back. They really left me. I thought about borrowing someone's phone, calling them, begging, but something inside me stopped. A lifetime of cruel jokes, forgotten birthdays, and dismissive smirks flashed through my mind. Aaron saying, "Man, I bet he's crying right now." Dad's voice. "He'll figure it out if he's not as stupid as he looks." Mom's silence. So I made a choice. I approached a woman with 2 kids and asked if I could use her phone. I didn't call my family. I called information and got the number for a local shelter in Grand Junction, about 40 miles away. Then I asked her if she could give me a ride into town, told her my family had to leave for an emergency. She hesitated, but in the end, she agreed. That night at the shelter, I stared at the ceiling in a room filled with strangers and broken people. I had nothing. No phone, no ID, no home. But for the first time in my life, I also had something else. Freedom. And I wasn't going to waste it. The next morning, I woke up on a thin mattress at the shelter, the smell of stale coffee and disinfectant in the air. My back ached from sleeping on springs, but I felt oddly clear-headed. No voices yelling down the hallway. No footsteps outside my door that made my stomach clench. Just silence. I borrowed the shelter's old desktop computer and began building a new version of myself from scratch. I used the last name Dawson, my grandmother's maiden name. I didn't want to carry the one Dad gave me anymore. I searched how to replace a lost ID without existing documents, how to get a birth certificate reissued, and jobs that paid cash under the table. Then I made a list. A real, handwritten list. My new life had started with a woman's kindness, and a lie. I intended to keep it going with honesty and effort. That afternoon, I walked into a small diner just off Main Street, Sonny's. It had this faded yellow awning and the kind of chipped mugs that made you think of the 70s. I asked the woman behind the counter, Geraldine, I'd later learn, if they were hiring. She looked me up and down, no ID, no resume. Wearing the same clothes I had on the day my family left me. "You steal from me," she said. "I'll make sure your picture's on every bathroom wall in town." Then she tossed me a stained apron and pointed to the dish pit. That was my interview. For 2 weeks, I scrubbed pots, cleaned greasy vents, and emptied trash until my fingers blistered. I showered at the shelter and slept with a towel rolled behind my head. Geraldine didn't say much, but she noticed everything. One night, she asked why a kid like me didn't have a home. I told her the truth, not the whole ugly mess, but enough. She didn't say a word, just slid a plate of leftover meatloaf my way and walked off. That was her version of kindness. My first paycheck was $60 in tips and cash under the table. I bought a prepaid flip phone from Walmart and a cheap duffel bag from the thrift store to hold my donated clothes. With Dave's help, the shelter volunteer who reminded me of a tired Santa, I sent off the paperwork for a new birth certificate and started the process to rebuild an identity. 7 days after being abandoned, the phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. Unknown number. I answered. "Ethan?" It was my mother. Her voice trembled. "Where are you? Are you okay? We didn't mean to—" Your father thought. In the background, I heard Dennis bark something like, "He's being dramatic," and Aaron laughing like it was all still one big joke. "Say something," Mom begged. "Please, we've been calling you for days." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached, and then I said the one sentence I'd never imagined I'd have the strength to say. "You wanted to see if I could make it on my own," I said, voice steady, quiet. "Well, now you get to watch." And I hung up. I blocked the number. Then I blocked every number I remembered from back home. I walked to the Verizon store the next morning and changed my number entirely. 27 missed calls disappeared in an instant. And with them, the last tether I had to a life that never loved me. I didn't run. I rebuilt, brick by brick, dish by dish, day by hard, messy, beautiful day. 3 months after that call, I had a place of my own. A tiny studio apartment above a laundromat, just one room and a bathroom with a shower that groaned like it hated working. It always smelled like detergent and hot dust, but it was mine. My name was on the lease. Ethan Dawson. I hung my one coat on the wall like it was art and used milk crates as shelves. There was no furniture except a secondhand mattress and a folding chair I pulled from someone's curb. But that place felt like a palace. I was still working at Sonny's. Now officially on the books thanks to my new ID, Geraldine bumped me up to prep cook. It didn't come with a raise, just more responsibilities and burns from the flat top. But she'd taught me how to hold a knife properly, how to dice onions without sobbing like a soap opera star. I took pride in those calluses. Dave from the shelter checked in once a week. He brought me a coffee maker once, said it was from a church donation. It only brewed half a cup before wheezing to death, but I kept it anyway. A reminder of where I'd started. Most nights, I came home dead tired and crashed without dinner. But sometimes I'd scroll through my old email, the one tied to my past life. There were messages from Mom, "Please come home, we're sorry," and from Dad, "This childish behavior needs to stop." Aaron, of course, sent things like, "You're overreacting, it was just a joke, grow up." I never replied. The loneliness didn't hit all at once. It crept in during quiet moments. Seeing other people laugh with their families at the diner. Watching a kid run into their dad's arms in the park. holidays were the hardest. I spent Thanksgiving at the diner, helping Geraldine deep-fry turkeys for a fundraiser. I told her I volunteered. Truth was, I couldn't stand the idea of spending the day alone. She didn't say anything, just handed me a hairnet and pointed to the fryer. Sonny's became more than a job. It was my anchor. I showed up early, stayed late, cleaned things no one asked me to. Geraldine noticed. One night, after closing, she pulled a stool over and taught me how to make her apple pie from scratch. Said I had good hands for pastry, then immediately warned me not to get cocky, but I could tell it meant something. It was the first genuine compliment I could remember getting in years. That night, I walked home in the cold, pie dough still on my sleeve, and I realized something. For the first time since that rest stop, I wasn't surviving. I was living. No more waiting for someone to save me. No more hoping my family would suddenly see my worth. They didn't deserve to. I was building a life they'd never be a part of. And I was okay with that. 4 years after that day at the Colorado rest stop, my life looked nothing like the one they left me behind to rot in. Sonny's had opened a second location across town, Sonny's East, and Geraldine, after months of hinting and grumbling, finally handed me the keys. Not ownership, but management. "Don't let it go to your head," she'd said, but I saw the pride in her eyes. I'd worked my way up from washing dishes to running a whole kitchen. I made the schedule, I signed the orders. I was building something that couldn't be taken away with one cruel joke. By then, I wasn't alone either. Kendra, who used to study at the counter with a Denver omelet and her med school textbook, now lived with me. It started small, coffee refills, teasing about my name tag always being wrong. Our first date happened by accident. A canceled study group turned into a shared pizza at a hole-in-the-wall downtown. 6 months later, she moved in. A year after that, we upgraded from the laundromat apartment to a modest 2-bedroom on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but we had real windows and a dishwasher that mostly worked. Sometimes we argued about laundry or whose turn it was to cook, but it was the kind of normal I never thought I'd get. One morning, Kendra sat across from me, sipping coffee in one of my old Metallica shirts, and casually mentioned her student loans. I didn't say anything, just filed it away. I'd been saving a little every month, tips, bonuses, anything extra. 2 weeks later, I made a lump sum payment on one of her smaller loans. When I showed her the confirmation screen, she cried like I'd handed her the moon. Not quiet movie tears. Real, ugly, snotty tears. And all I could do was hold her and wonder when exactly I'd become the kind of man who could do that for someone. I still kept tabs on my family, mostly out of curiosity. From a fake Facebook account, I watched the carefully curated version of their lives. My mom's page was a shrine to the past. Old family photos, captions about missing her boys. She never mentioned me by name. My dad posted angry rants about the new Home Depot putting his store out of business. Aaron bounced between jobs and business ventures, posting vague updates like, "Haters gonna hate," and "Big things coming soon." But mostly, they just looked stuck. When my grandmother died, I found out through Facebook. She was the only one who'd ever stood up to banks. She used to slip me 20s and whisper, "For your escape." I thought she meant college. Turns out, she meant survival. I almost went to the funeral. Kendra offered to come with me. Doug, my neighbor and resident bad garage band bassist, said he'd drive if I needed it. Geraldine just shrugged. Dead people don't know if you show up or not. Do what brings you peace. In the end, I didn't go. I sent flowers, a simple bouquet with a card signed Ethan. No note, no return address. The explosion on social media was immediate. Cryptic posts, sentimental throwbacks, signs from beyond. A week later, I got a friend request from a name I didn't recognize. No friends, no posts. Just one message. "It's Uncle Marty. Your mom gave me your email, but it bounced. Are you okay?" I blocked the account. That night, I had my first panic attack in 2 years. Sitting on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., trying not to wake Kendra, my chest tight, hands numb, heart pounding like it remembered every awful word Banks ever shouted. Kendra found me there, silent but steady. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She just sat beside me until I could breathe again. When I finally looked at her, she said something so simple it made me cry all over again. "They can't take anything from you unless you give it to them." 5 years to the day after they left me at that Colorado rest stop, I stood at the altar in a quiet state park surrounded by people who truly knew me, who chose me. Kendra wore a simple dress that made her look like sunlight. Doug, in a suit that didn't fit, and shoes I think he borrowed, stood beside me as my best man. Geraldine made the cake and cried from the front row, dabbing her eyes with a napkin from her purse. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, but she never looked happier. Kendra's parents were there too. Kind, ordinary people who treated me like I'd always been part of their family. Her dad even told a dad joke before the vows, and for the first time in my life, it didn't make me flinch, it made me laugh. I was no longer Salvador, the forgotten son, waiting for a ride that would never come. I was Ethan, a husband, a chef, a man who had built something from ashes. A week after the wedding, I saw it. A post on a community Facebook page from my hometown. A blurry photo of me cropped from an old magazine article, looking for my son Ethan, last known location Grand Junction, Colorado. Family. Emergency. It was signed Banks. There was no emergency. Not really. I knew it the moment I read it, but curiosity got the better of me. I created another fake account and joined a few local groups. It didn't take long to piece things together. The hardware store had closed. Their second mortgage had gone belly up. Mom had medical issues. She was vague about needing help. Aaron had moved back in after another DUI. The life they built on cruelty and pride was crumbling. They weren't looking for me out of love. They were looking for me because I had something they didn't. For the first time, I didn't feel sick or scared. I felt nothing. Not hate, not revenge. Just clarity. I closed the laptop and climbed into bed next to Kendra, her hand immediately finding mine even in her sleep. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't go back, not even out of spite. Instead, I lived. Every ordinary day became a quiet act of defiance. Every joke with Doug over his awful home brews, every shift I covered at Sonny's, every quiet Sunday with Kendra reading on the porch. Those were my revenge. Not against them, really. Against the version of me they tried to create. The one who was supposed to fail. I watched Ellie take her first steps in the living room, where Banks once yelled about everything being his house. I watched Marcus sleep through the night in a room filled with dinosaur stickers and hand-me-down books from Kendra's childhood. I stood behind the pass at Sonny's East, watching a team I hired, trained, and believed in serve a full dining room of regulars. None of it was grand or flashy, but it was mine. And then one day, I stopped checking the Facebook groups. I stopped opening the old email account. I stopped needing to know what they were doing. Because it didn't matter anymore. I'd already won. Not because I crushed them. Not because I got rich or famous or came back to flaunt my success. But because I survived. Because I built a life out of love and laughter and the kind of small, everyday peace that people like Banks never understand. I never made it back home. I did something better. I built one